Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It is 12 noon on the dot, and I see the chat is living up already. I just want to offer greetings and welcome to our public ministry Elections Matter Voter Power Town Hall. Again, I am Reverend Jeremy McCants, along with Dr. Allie Whitehurst, as we serve as the co-chairs of the Allen Temple Public Ministry. And from the public ministry of it's about 10 of us who stand strong and who are committed to social justice and to upholding the ethic of morality, of being the hands and feet of Jesus here on earth, and to be the civic engagement arm of the Allen Temple Baptist Church. So on behalf of us, the public ministry, we welcome you into this space as we seek to dive in a little bit more as election season is upon us. Have mercy. Time is moving. As the elders would say, time is filled with swift transition. So we want to make sure that we are equipped, that we are educated, and that we are knowledgeable of all that is going on with so much that is going on. So I just wanted to welcome you. Thank you for taking some time out of your Saturday afternoon to join us. And of course, folks will continue trickling in. So please say hey, shout out whoever you may need to shout out in the chat. We just want to offer thanks and gratitude for you all joining us this afternoon. So just a few housekeeping tips. Of course, we are all pretty comfortable with Zoom now, I hope. So we ask, of course, that you all stay on mute. Please utilize the chat for any questions that you may have. There will be a Q&A portion of the program later on after we hear from some of our distinguished panelists and speakers. And of course, yes, you are definitely free to be on camera if you will, but there is no pressure for you to be on camera. We just ask that you stay muted when other folks are presenting. So thank you all so much, and we will continue to move through the program. I do not believe I see Deacon Reginald Lyles with us just yet. So I will take it upon myself to open us up with scripture and, Deacon Lyles, I see you, my friend. Okay, you connecting. You're on mute. All right.
Good.
Awesome. You good? You ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready to rock and roll.
All right, it's on you. I'm gonna pin you and you have the floor, good sir.
Thank you. Good morning, good morning. I hope I'm being heard right now.
We hear you loud and clear, D.
You're coming
Wonderful.
through.
Thank you. Well, I want to focus on Micah 6 and 8, which is a great text from the great prophet Micah, who lived in Moraseth, a little small community that was the source of water. So when the enemy armies would come from Egypt, they would have to stop in Moraseth and to get water and then head to Jerusalem to assault Jerusalem. So Micah would complain on high holy days about the injustice that the people in Jerusalem ignoring the folks in Moraseth. So he wrote, "Oh man, you know what is good. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly before your God." Micah 6 and 8. Dear Lord, let us pray. Almighty God, we love you. We first want to say we're sorry for not living up to your expectations. We ask you to sharpen our minds and our tongues and our actions so that we can do justice, that we can love mercy and walk humbly with you. Bless this meeting. Bless all that's under the sound of my voice. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen. God bless.
Amen. Thank you, Deacon Lyles, for that timely scripture and prayer and that charge for us to live into the prophetic witness of Micah. And to love mercy and to do justice and walk humbly with our God. It is always my pleasure and esteemed privilege to introduce and welcome the pastor and the shepherdess of Allen Temple Baptist Church, none other than the Reverend Dr. Jacqueline A. Thompson. And she will come to us now with opening remarks for our time together this afternoon. Pastor Jackie, it's on you.
Thank you, Reverend Jeremy. Good afternoon, everyone. It is so good to see so many of you here. I see your comments in the chat. For those of you who haven't spoken yet, at least say something and let me know you are there. It's a beautiful afternoon and always an appropriate and a wonderful time to engage around the issues that are affecting our community. So let me express my heartfelt, deep appreciation to our public ministries under the leadership of Reverend Jeremy and Dr. Allie Whitehurst, to all of our guests that are going to be joining us today, and for the League of Women Voters, who are going to be doing some education around the many propositions that are coming before us. And so Deacon Lyles, in his selection of scripture, has already discussed the context, but I certainly want to reinforce that midterm elections matter. Historically, not only has our community had low voter turnout, but particularly in midterm elections. We have Senate seats. Good afternoon, Secretary. It's glad to have you here. We have Senate seats that are open. We have House of Representative seats that are open, governorships that are open. Even right here in Oakland, we have very, very competitive races that we need to be paying attention to. And so if you take an opportunity, once this time is over, share this link. If it's on Facebook, recommend somebody go there to get this information. I said to you last Sunday, all of the propaganda, the commercial, the money that is being poured into propositions, it is our responsibility to make sure we are aware and educated around the issues. And so this is a very, very, very important time of sharing. Please take time to engage, utilize the chat, ask your questions. We're grateful for the candidates who are taking time out to join us, and we certainly extend our heartfelt welcome to all of them, and to our Secretary of State, who is going to reinforce for us why midterm elections matter. So thank you for this opportunity just to greet the people, Reverend Jeremy and Dr. Allie, and I look forward to a wonderful time of engagement and sharing.
Thank you, Pastor Jackie, for those words, and thank you for the call to action and the what they call the purpose of our time together. So without haste and without Terry and Servant BK, good to see you. I'm not gonna start calling names. This is Rob, everybody. So family, I love it. So I love the accountability that we hold with each other, because this is a very serious moment that we need to respond in. So I am going to turn it over to Sister Carol Lee, who is going to introduce our very own Secretary of State. Sister Carol Lee.
I'm here.
I see you, Penny.
You're going to see my lovely portrait today.
We love it. It's a lovely.
Okay, so thank you, Reverend Jeremy. It is definitely a wonderful day. Thank you, Pastor Jackie. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you for attending today's Midterm Matters Town Hall. The public ministry is honored to introduce our California Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber, who has emerged as a powerful voice for voting rights and election reform. Dr. Weber was born on a farm in rural Hope, Arkansas, where her father was a sharecropper. When he refused to back down in a dispute with a white farmer, her father's life was threatened by a lynch mob. Excuse me. Consequently, the family was forced to flee from their home. They went west, eventually settling in the projects of South Los Angeles. Thus, Dr. Weber's California story began at age 3. She attended public schools and earned her PhD at the ripe old age of 26. She subsequently became one of the youngest professors at San Diego State University, where she helped to found the Africana Studies Department. Our Secretary of State has more than 20 years of public service. Dr. Weber served on the San Diego Board of Education and in the California State Assembly. She was nominated by Governor Newsom on December 22nd, 2020, to become California's 30th Secretary of State, and was subsequently confirmed by a bipartisan House majority on January 28th, 2021. Dr. Weber's legislative agenda has included education, civil rights, public safety, food insecurity, disability protections, and of course, voting rights. Additionally, before becoming Secretary of State, Dr. Weber served as chair of the Elections and Redistricting Committee, helped oversee California's elections and campaign finance law, and authored legislation to extend voting rights to those on parole or probation. During her time in the Assembly, the San Diego Union Tribune called her, and I quote, an effective legislator and educator known to take up fights from which many shy away. And according to Governor Gavin Newsom, quote, Dr. Weber's unimpeachable integrity and moral clarity have made her one of the most respected public officials in California. Many have also said that Dr. Weber's record of defending civil and voting rights also makes her the Secretary of State that California needs and deserves. And in conclusion, Secretary of State Weber is the mother of 2 children. She has 2 grandsons, 1 granddaughter, and the widow of the late Honorable Daniel Weber, who served as a judge for the great state of California. Welcome, Dr. Weber, and thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Well, thank you so very much. And I'm really honored to be with you today. I'll have to talk to my staff about giving you guys these long introductions, but nothing. I'm honored to be with you. I consider it quite an honor to be the Secretary of State and to be given opportunity to serve. As I tell my friends often, it's kind of ironic that a kid from Hope, Arkansas, whose parents never got a chance to vote in Arkansas, whose grandparents died before the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and so they never got a chance to vote in the United States. And neither did my great-grandparents, who were former slaves and once again fell under the Jim Crow laws of this nation, that they never got a chance to vote. And yet their daughter and granddaughter and great-granddaughter becomes the election official of a state that has the largest voting population in the nation, 22 million voters. And so I'm honored. It's kind of ironic that we've come to this place. But my family believed very strongly in voting. And most folks know that my family home in Los Angeles was a voting poll because there was none in our community. And so my mother opened up our house for that. And I say all of that because obviously voting is an extremely important act, one that our community that the younger community oftentimes has not well embraced. And those who went through the storm of the South, who understood it, we know that our greatest voting population are our seniors. Those who know what it's like to be denied the opportunity to vote, but who also know what happens when you have nothing to vote for. That those who you're voting for are not interested in your best interest. And so it's really important to vote and to vote those individuals in who are going to serve us and serve us well. This is a very important time. This is a mid-election time. And we sometimes get riled up when it's time to vote for the president. We did in the last election. Folks felt they had something to vote against, and so therefore they organized to vote. We should vote whether or not it's the current, whether it's the president that we're voting for, whether it's the school board we're voting for, whether it's the city council or the local mayor. Voting is powerful, and it is extremely important that we do that. If we don't understand or didn't understand before how powerful it is, I think all of us know now as we watch the Supreme Court do various kinds of things that we find offensive to us and taking away some of our rights and those kinds of things. That didn't happen overnight. That happened because of the selections that occurred in other elections. The fact that we have a Supreme Court, that we have a bench now, even in our appeals courts, that sometimes make these unusual decisions that overturn decisions that are made at the local level for years to come, and actually go against the principles of democracy in the process of doing it. That didn't happen overnight. That happened as a result of a multitude of elections. I tell people that who are upset over what the Supreme Court is doing, I said that the top of that was when Obama was denied an opportunity to appoint someone to the Supreme Court. That in itself is what we are dealing with right now. That is the battle that we're fighting now, that we have allowed these things to happen and have not paid close attention to the small things, to every election counts. It's not just a presidential election. We see sometimes, even right now, that sometimes our presidents are stymied because the House and the Senate that they have to work with basically is counter to what the principles of the people are. And so when you end up with this situation where you have this divided kind of reality and this very partisanness, then we find ourselves fighting this battle over and over again and wondering what we've done. What we've done is we've gone to sleep at the wheel. I tell folks all the time, I never thought in my life that I would be fighting the battles that my parents fought in terms of the right to vote. Most of us thought that when the Voting Rights Act of 1965 passed, that we were done, that we had put our stake in the ground, that every vote counts, and that we're going to have the kind of respect for voters. And yet what we're seeing now, there were over 300 bills this past year in other states trying to take away people's right to vote, taking us back to where we were before 1965. This is as a result of us not paying close attention to every election, every person who's voted upon, every judge that's chosen, every governor in every state has power. We need to pay attention. Right now, the most powerful positions people are talking about now are the secretaries of state. Why? Because there are people who are running who are denying the fact that what happened in 2020 was correct. We have these folks who say they would insert themselves in and overturn the vote of the people and the will of the people. So we have a critical time that we're looking at. And so this midterm election is important. It will actually determine what happens for the next 4 to 8 years in this country. And we need to pay attention to that because that sets the groundwork for the presidential election and for other senatorial seats that come afterwards. So I want to emphasize the fact that this is our power, that voting is power. I've been speaking with a number of high school students all week long. We were up and down Riverside and San Bernardino and various high schools and the Dodger Stadium and places like that, helping young people to understand that the power of voting. And it's interesting because in the process, I realized that there were a number of adults who were listening very closely to what I was saying. And I was telling these students, I said, the voting is so powerful that it really is the American equalizer. That when you think about it, it doesn't matter that I'm Secretary of State and responsible for 22 million voters, the largest voting base in the nation. It doesn't matter because I'm going to get one vote. That's it. Your governor, Newsom, is going to get one vote. Biden gets one vote. What an equalizing situation, but also a very powerful situation that you understand that it doesn't matter how much money you have, where you live, that you're going to get one vote, the same vote that someone who has far more resources than you have. And when you choose not to vote, you basically give up that power. You give up your ability to change your life, and you increase the power to other people because now the voting pool is smaller, which means the weight of the vote increases for that individual. So I tell students, I said, you don't want to give up your right to vote. You don't want to give up your power because you're probably giving it to someone who doesn't even like you. And that shocks the students. They begin to think, oh my God, yeah, I don't want to give up my power. There's people who are going to vote against me, work against me, and they're not going to pay attention to me. And so I want to just encourage all of us as we start talking about what we're doing here. We are exercising our power and our voice. And when I was on the school board, it was so disheartening at times because I'd have people from my community who would show up who have real issues, and people would kind of listen but not pay a lot of attention. And yet someone would come from a community, that affluent community where the voting base was 80, 90%, and they would ask for something so simple and so sometimes idiotic that was inconsequential to what life was about. And people would pay attention. They would sit up and they would do the best they could to give them what they needed. And I tell students all the time, people pay attention to those who vote. When you don't vote, they will listen to you, but they may not respond to what you need because you can't help them. You can't get them reelected. You can't defend them. You can't keep those folks in office. Those elected officials want to look to those kinds of things that are going to really move them forward. So as we talk about this, keep in mind, we've had, our population is growing. We're working hard with our young people because our voting base and young people, even in the election, with the presidential election, only 47% of our young people between 18 and 25 actually voted, where the rest of the population was in the 80s and 90s. And now in the most recent election, the primary, we only had 14% of all those 18 to 25 who actually voted. And yet decisions are being made about your life. I said, even the forgiveness of loans, if you're a student, hey, if every student registered and every student voted, they wouldn't be forgiving some of the loans. They would be forgiving all of the loans. So even though a little bit was given, there's a whole lot more in that pot that you can get. And so you need to become an advocate for yourself and make sure that we do that. California has made it easy for us to vote. And I'll you know, to the extent that every person,
because I didn't know I had one.
the citizen, basically you can vote in California. Only people who can't vote in California is a person who is physically sitting in a state or federal prison, not even a jail, state or federal prison. Everyone else in California can vote. We have franchised everyone. We've made it possible for them to vote. We've got everyone gets a vote by mail ballot. You can turn it in. Some places have 10 days to vote. If you're a BCA county, you can either mail it in, you can drop it in a ballot box, or you can show up at the vote centers to vote. We give you more days, as we say, in more ways in which you can vote. There's no excuse for anyone not voting in the upcoming election. People are looking to us and wondering where our voice is. Our voice needs to be heard at the ballot box, and then we need to continue with that afterwards to make sure that we take that forward. If you have any questions, you can always contact my website at sos.ca.gov. We have information concerning your polling places, how to vote, all those kinds of activities. If you have schools that you'd like for us to attend, my staff is available to basically go to our high schools. We're pre-registering high school students. We've almost pre-registered 1 million high school students who are prepared to vote when they turn 18. So I want to encourage everyone today to really take things seriously about what we're doing, because every election counts. Every election, every primary, every general election, every midterm election, every election has consequences. And because our community doesn't always vote, we generally suffer more than anyone else in terms of consequences. So I hope you take advantage of that. Our election is November 8th, and it's available to you. All of you will get a vote by mail ballot. If you have not registered to vote, be sure to do that. You can do that online. And if you still forget on the day of the election in California, you can vote, you can register and vote on the day of the election. So look forward to seeing you all and seeing the results of the election, knowing that it's going to be a great turnout in the Bay Area, because you've got a powerful group of people helping you and working on your behalf and reminding you how important it is. Thank you all for having me with you this morning. I appreciate it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Secretary Weber, for that timely information. I've never thought about that as it being the great equalizer, that no matter how much power you may have or proximity to power you may think you have, you got one vote, and to make that count, and the intentionality around getting our youth and young adults just involved in the process, right? In California, you know, being able to register at 16 and 17, just learning what that process looks like and how your voice is power and powerful. So we just thank you for everything. We want to recognize President George Holland of the Oakland chapter of the NAACP for joining us. Thank you to all our partners, all those who support our work, who love Black folks. I'm gonna say that unequivocally, who love Black folks and who love Oakland. So welcome to you all who are joining us. Now it is my pleasure to turn it over to our sister who will take us into our DA conversation, Sister Melanie Gross, and she will introduce herself and our DA candidates as we move into the next portion of our service, or of our program. See, I think I'm in church.
Well, Secretary of State Weber actually took us to church, so that's okay, Reverend Jeremy. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melanie Gross, and I am a member of the Allen Temple's Public Ministry. I am super excited about today's discussion. Being an attorney myself, I look forward to hearing from Attorney Wiley and Attorney Price. As Secretary Weber said, our vote is so important, and being an informed voter is key. As we prepare for these midterm elections, I am pleased to moderate today's discussion with two very accomplished attorneys who are running for the office of District Attorney of Alameda County. We look forward today to learning more from you about your background, about your platform, and what you would do if elected into office to really lead with impact in Alameda County. So to kick off today's discussion, we will have both Attorney Terry Wiley and then Attorney Price to give a brief introduction, tell us a little bit about yourselves. We will give you 2 minutes each, and then we will go into some prepared questions and then hopefully have time for questions from today's attendees. I have the fun job of letting you all know, because we do have time is tight. I will let each of you know when you are at 30 seconds, a little 30-second warning by raising this yellow card. Hopefully you all can see that before we turn it over to the next person to ask the question, answer the posed question. So without further delay, I will turn it over first to Attorney Terry Wiley to introduce himself and share a little bit more about your background and why you were running for District Attorney of Alameda County, and then we will hear from Attorney Pamela Price.
All right. Oh, hey, good afternoon. Good mid-afternoon, everyone. I want to acknowledge Pastor Thompson and the Allen Temple Public Ministry for having us here today. This is an important discussion. We have a district attorney's office that needs new leadership, but it has to be leadership that is about safety and justice. You know, my experience as the Chief Assistant District Attorney has enabled me to personally understand the strengths, weaknesses, and potential of the office of Alameda County District Attorney. Since the primary, when you look at the additional endorsements that I picked up, I now have the endorsements of 4 of the 5 members of the Alameda County Board of Supervisors. Last week, I picked up an important endorsement from Attorney General Rob Bonta and a host of other additional endorsements. But I got those endorsements because I represent balanced and experienced leadership. I want to build a real working relationship with our local police departments, the newly elected county sheriff, and the Alameda courts and the Board of Supervisors, so we can provide effective protection of the community, but also a system that brings fairness and justice. And I think after we finish today's conversation, you will see that with the balance and experience that I bring to this job and the understanding of the job, it is a $100 million government agency that is very complex, comprised of 3 different divisions with 423 employees. And it's not a job that you can just come in with not having prosecuted one case in your whole legal career and take over that agency. So I look forward to today's discussion. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Attorney Wiley. I will turn it over to Attorney Price to give her introduction.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I bring you greetings from Glad Tidings Church of God in Christ, where Bishop J.W. Macklin is both my pastor and my friend, and he has endorsed our campaign for Alameda County District Attorney. Also, I come to you today on my birthday out of great respect for my dear friend and your former pastor, J. Alfred Smith Sr. And certainly the church has not endorsed us, but the pastor has. And I'm honored to have your Pastor Emeritus's endorsement. As most of you may know, I've been a member of the faith community in Alameda County, primarily in Oakland, although now in Hayward, but since 1981, when I joined the Church of the Good Shepherd Baptist and got married there 10 years later. And some of y'all may remember I sang in the Free Spirits Choir. So I have been a part of this community since 1978 and have been embraced by Alameda County and got to become the lawyer that I wanted to be here. I came from Cincinnati, Ohio, where I survived the Ohio juvenile justice and the foster care system. And I literally made it to Yale College by the grace of God. I got a great education at Yale and then at UC Berkeley, where I graduated with 3 degrees. And so it's been my privilege to serve this community for 30 years as a civil rights attorney, handling cases all the way up to the United States Supreme Court and trying and prosecuting civil cases across California, from Sacramento to Fresno to Amador County, and representing victims and pushing the envelope for justice. And as John Lewis would say, making good trouble in the Democratic Party and in this community, holding law enforcement and corporations and government institutions accountable. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you both for those powerful introductions. And so now we will dive into a few prepared questions that we have for you all today. And just remember, you have 1 minute each to answer the question, because we have quite a few questions that have come in. So my first question for you all is, what distinguishes you and your proposed agenda from that of your predecessors? And what could we expect from you in this distinction as your priorities in the first 180 days in office if you were to be elected? Oh, you all just jump in. I guess I'll direct that first to Attorney Price.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, wasn't clear. That's a lot to answer in a minute, but I will say what distinguishes me from the current administration is that I will hold bad cops accountable for bad acts. This county is desperate for police accountability, and we have not had that. And the kind of lawlessness that we see in different parts of the county, I think directly comes from the fact that people don't trust police, and we're not able to get the kinds of results that we need, particularly in Oakland. I am a civil rights attorney, so that means I believe in constitutional policing. I believe in the Constitution as the standard by which the district attorney should administer justice. And so I will not tolerate the racial disparities that have been allowed to fester in this system for decades. Literally for 60 years, we have been living under the Jim Crow administration that has created mass incarceration in Alameda County and California. And so I will root out the racial and economic and gender disparities that have become normalized in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office and in our criminal justice system. I will no longer prosecute young people as adults, which the legislature has pretty much tried to outlaw because district attorneys literally drove the bus from the playground to the prison. And we will stop that. I will provide alternatives for young people from ages 18 to 26. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. I think what distinguishes me from the previous administrations and my current opponent is the level of experience I bring to the job, but I also bring a very balanced approach to the job. And I think it's been the balanced approach that I've had over the years in the district attorney's office that has led to so many in the civil rights community endorsing my candidacy. That's why John Burris has endorsed me. And that's why Benjamin Crump, who represented the family of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and Trayvon Martin, has endorsed me. Because I bring a very balanced approach, but I bring experience. And so I think that my first priority has to be tackling the level of violence that is currently plaguing Alameda County, but particularly Oakland. And what I have planned is we are going to create the Crime Strategies Unit, which will be a unit of 7 or 8 of our top DAs in the Alameda County DA's office. And it will be a data-driven unit that will focus on the 2,000 individuals that we know are driving about 70% of the violent crime in Alameda County. And their sole job is going to be to focus on those individuals who will be given both educational and job opportunities first to put their guns down, but they will be told in a very serious way that if you don't put your guns down, we are going to get you out of the community of Oakland and Alameda County, and where you will not be allowed to shoot and commit violent acts in this community. I think secondly, we are going to do a major expansion of drug programs and mental health programs so that those individuals that may be involved in nonviolent property crimes and other types of crimes can find a different trajectory to not commit those crimes. And that will be a greatly expanded opportunities for those individuals. But I think as Ms. Price said, there's a lot to take in with that question. But those would be some of the major things that would distinguish me from the previous administrations and Ms. Price. Thank you.
Thank you both. And you actually, in your responses, actually tackled one of the key questions that I had for you, certainly around, what would you all do to ensure, with the federal oversight of, the Oakland PD, actually being removed now and them going into a probation period. Really curious to hear from you. What would you do to ensure that with that federal oversight being removed, that there would be accountability both at the local police level and Oakland PD department, but across the PD? So you all touched on that. Is there anything else you would want to add to that in terms of what you would do to ensure accountability for the local police departments, especially with an eye towards the Oakland Police Department? And I will turn that question over to Attorney Price.
Sure. I have been working as pro bono counsel with the Coalition for Police Accountability in Oakland for about the last 4 years. And we specifically asked the court to allow the community representative to intervene in that lawsuit with the idea that it would take authority from the monitor and stop. We have been paying $100,000 a month, in part because of the loss of the writer's case, which was a colossal failure in this community. But the civil rights bar was able to hold OPD accountable, as you all know, for 18 years under this consent decree. It has cost us a fortune. And so we asked the court to allow the community representatives, certain plaintiffs that stepped up, people from the community who are willing to join that committee that oversees OPD with a view. Our plan, which we proposed, was that the Oakland Police Commission would take oversight over the police department and making sure that the constitutional safeguards that are mandated by the consent decree would continue to be monitored. So I've very much been a part of that effort and certainly stand ready to work with the coalition, obviously, as the new district attorney to bring about the kind of change that we've been advocating for the last 4 years. And I understand, having looked at the consent decree and been a monitor appointed by the court, both for Contra Costa County as well as the California Department of Corrections, how to take the ideas and the mandates that are provided in the consent decree and to make them applicable to every police department in the county. And I think that absolutely is what needs to happen. Thank you.
I think when you look at my career in the district attorney's office and you go back to the year 2000, I had been in the district attorney's office for about 10 years at that point. And my career, I think by any measure at that point, was considered to be outstanding in terms of what I had accomplished in terms of trials and just everything I was doing both inside and outside the district attorney's office. But as we all know, with law enforcement, if you are seen or if you make a decision to go against law enforcement, that can have detrimental impacts on your career. Well, when the writer's case arose, what I said was that I'm going to maintain my principles at all times in this office. And what I did not sign up for was police officers planting evidence on people, beating people, and engaged in systemic corruption. And so when it came to the writer's case, I took that case on, despite the fact that we had a jury polls that in Alameda County and really throughout California who saw police officers did no wrong. So it was a very difficult case to try in a criminal court. But I think that the subsequent federal oversight that occurred, despite its expense, resulted in many lives being saved, because now today, they cannot engage in any kind of force without reporting that force in their reports. I mean, there are a number of things that they have to do today that they did not have to do back in 2000. And I will continue to hold all police agencies to a high standard. I think I'm out of town, but you can expect that they will be held to a high standard. And that's one of the reasons I didn't get the endorsements of any of the police officer associations when I ran for district attorney, because they know I will hold everybody responsible.
All right, thank you. I know it's tough to stay within that 1 to 2 minute time frame.
Yes,
I
yes.
appreciate you. I know it's a meaty question, and I'm sure that topic alone could be the topic of today's discussion. We have a couple more questions, and then I want to be able to turn it over to our attendees who might have a few questions to ask today. In this office, the district attorney, you are a reflection of the community's priorities. And so transparency and accountability to the community is so important. If elected, what would you implement to ensure your office's accountability and remains accountable and transparent to the public? And I will start with you, Attorney Wiley, since we started with Attorney Price the last time.
Well, I think that one of the things that I have found just over the years is that despite, I know many of us on this call knows what the role of the district attorney is, and they know, and you all know what we do. You'd be surprised at how many in the public actually don't fully understand the role of the district attorney. And so I think, and I think that is in part because we don't do a good job of explaining to the public and keeping them informed as to what our role is in society. So I think for one, you have to do a better job of communicating with the public so that they understand the role of the district attorney. But secondly, because we are the administrators of justice in the community, it's very important that we be completely transparent with what's going on a weekly, monthly basis in terms of how we're dealing with criminal cases. And so one of the things that we will be implementing, if I'm the district attorney of Alameda County, is the reporting of all of the statistics that we are seeing on a monthly basis. And what I mean by that, how many crimes are being committed, how many arrests are being made as a result of those arrests that are being brought over to the district attorney's office, how many of those arrests are resulting in charges actually being filed, and the ethnicity of the individuals who are both committing the crimes and having cases charged against them, so that the public is fully informed. And if, for example, this group has any questions about what's going on with the district attorney's office, you'll have the data right there at your fingers that we can all have a discussion about. And I think that when you have that kind of transparency and that kind of openness, we begin to develop lines of communication, but more importantly, lines of trust, so that we can all move forward and have a better sense and feeling about our criminal justice system.
Thank you. Attorney Price, we'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Can I ask how much time do we get? Because I'm seeing more than 1 minute answers. I don't know if I have 1 minute or 2 minutes or what.
So it's 1 to 2 minutes. And
Oh,
I'm just, when you start to get close to that 2 minute time frame, I'm holding up the card. It's a fair question, Attorney Price, but when we start approaching the 2 minute time frame at 30 seconds, I hold up that card, and then 15 seconds, just a reminder for you all.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I thought it was 1 minute. I'm sitting here saying, what is happening? Thank you so much. So can you repeat the question, please? It was about transparency, but I want to make sure I answer it correctly.
That is fair. So the question really is, what would you do if elected to ensure that your office remains transparent and accountable to the public?
Sure. Let's be clear, this office has never been transparent or accountable to the public. We have had an appointed district attorney since 1939. When Earl Warren left, the DAs made a decision that before the end of his term, the district attorney would step down. He would nominate his chief deputy as his successor to fill out the rest of his term, and then the Board of Supervisors would appoint that person. This has been an elected office since 1853, but it has been, this is the first time we have not had an appointed district attorney taking the seat since 1939. And so because of that, we have not had transparency. Most people don't know what the DA does because the DA doesn't tell them, and the DA has never had to tell and speak to the people of this county or be accountable to the people of this county. When I ran in 2017, as Mr. Wiley has acknowledged, nobody had run against this office since 1966, which for many people is their entire lifetime. And so for the first time, people got to ask questions about what is the DA's doing? What does the DA do? What are the district attorney's priority? How is our 83 or $85 million budget at that time being spent? That was never a priority of the past administrations, and certainly not the current administration. So as your next district attorney, we have pledged that we will bring transparency, equity, and accountability to this office. Accountability means we will engage the community, as I have been doing for 30 years, being a member of this community. I will engage with different organizations, with different individuals. I will listen to the will of the voters of Alameda County. We have voted overwhelmingly for criminal justice reform, and our district attorney's office has been consistently opposed to every criminal justice reform measure that we have voted in favor of. So being transparent means that I listen to the people I represent, I talk to the people I represent, I provide data about what my office is doing, and I allow people to have input into the decisions that we're making. And we don't try to hide the ball and make it just a good old boys club. Thank you.
Thank you both for those responses. We don't have any questions from the attendees yet. So attendees, I do encourage you to type your questions that you have for our distinguished panelists today in the chat. So I will move on to another question that we've received from our own group in the public ministry. Several laws went into effect earlier this year to implement what could result in significant reform in our criminal justice system, especially for people of color and for survivors of human trafficking. As DA, if elected, you would have tremendous influence on reform efforts. What is your personal view on the recent legislation, and which ones do you think are critical to emphasize as part of an effort to make an impact on criminal justice reform? In short, what could we expect to see from your office in focusing on these areas for impact?
Who's first?
I will start with Attorney Price.
Yeah, as a member of the Progressive Wave of Prosecutors, I have been watching for many years. I remember when Secretary Weber was in the State Assembly, and she was pushing along with Senator Holly Mitchell for criminal justice reform. And I participated as the executive director of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. We went to Sacramento and testified about some of the things that needed to happen, particularly around fines and fees, and around the access to voting with driver's license. A lot of things, as Secretary Weber points out, these things did not happen overnight. Criminal justice reform advocates have been on this road for about 10 years now, and we have successfully moved the needle to where now we have the Racial Justice Act, where now we have retroactive abolishment of fines and fees, which were devastating to Black and Brown communities, and which the Alameda County District Attorney's Office in particular was a major purveyor of these kinds of economic things that destabilize the economic community and took advantage of Black and Brown people and poor people. We criminalized poverty in Alameda County. That was our policy, and it was an aggressive policy. And the legislature stepped in and said, no, we're not going to do that. So I am looking forward to using the resources of the office to implement the policy that says where people have a judgment against them that Alameda County District Attorney's Office got for not paying fines and fees, we need to get rid of that. The legislature has mandated that. The legislature has mandated that we look at convictions that were based on racial bias. And that's something that the NAACP, quite frankly, should have done years ago. But the legislature has given us the opportunity now. The district attorney has the power to look at those. Who has the data? That's the district attorney. So you should expect me to be able to enforce the Racial Justice Act. And as someone who has had, I guess, as I pointed out, I monitored Contra Costa County for about 15 years for their EEO stats. So I will be able to address those issues on day one. Thank you. Sorry, it's not enough time.
Attorney Wiley.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, I've been on the campaign trail with Ms. Price for over a year now, and her strategy is to complain about everything she sees. She employed the same strategy when she ran for the assembly, when she ran for mayor, when she ran for DA in 2018, and when she's running now. But let me tell you, as someone who's been in the system, we wholeheartedly embrace the changes that are occurring in our criminal justice system. We have a conviction integrity unit that if you come to us and you have a problem with any conviction that may have been suffered, that they will give a full attention and address any issues that have occurred. Not only do we address cases where you feel you were wrongfully convicted, we address cases where you feel the sentence was unduly harsh, and we can make an adjustment to that sentence that you may have received. And we wholeheartedly embrace that. I think that when you look at the kinds of changes that are taking place, what you're really seeing in the adult system is the adoption of the approach that we have in the juvenile system, which is based on rehabilitation in juvenile. And so what you're seeing now in the adult system, which was based primarily on retribution, they are now adopting more of a juvenile approach to the adult system with more focus on rehabilitation. But I think that when you look at what you are going to embrace, in order to be effective in Alameda County, you have got to be prepared to address violence and the trauma that it is not only causing the families that are the victims of the violence, but also the people in those communities that are suffering the majority of the violence. I mean, I can tell you about a case that happened yesterday that is absolutely out of control. And I think that the question that should be asked of me and Ms. Price is, what do you plan on doing when someone is arrested for shooting at one car 3 times, driving further up 98th across International, getting into a beef with another car and firing 3 more shots at that person, and they get arrested? Ms. Price said that she will give that person restorative justice. Well, let me tell you, you fire 6 shots at 2 different cars and you're over 35 years old, you're not getting restorative justice. We're going to remove you from the community because you pose a threat to everyone in the community.
All righty, thank you both for your response and for the discussion today. We are running tight on our agenda, so unfortunately, I think we could have this discussion for an hour at a minimum. But what I'd like to do, because we are running on a tight agenda, is give each of you 1 minute. Just 1 minute, and I will be tight on the 1 minute because I wasn't tight exactly with both of you. Starting with Attorney Wiley, I want you to give us one close and just reflect on what's one thing we can, count on if you were elected into office that you would be implementing. 1 minute.
1 minute. In this 1 minute, I want to say that, I'm running for District Attorney of Alameda County because I love Alameda County. I love Oakland. And I want to make sure that the people of Oakland, that their children are safe, that people can walk in the community and not be afraid of being shot, not being afraid of being robbed or having their cars broken into. Because what the system is missing right now is that even for the low-level nonviolent property crimes, which is a very large number of the crimes that get committed, there is not enough accountability baked into the system. Because I have no problem giving you an opportunity to find a different direction. But at some point, there has to be accountability in the system so that people have some fear of reoffending and impacting the community. And I think that if you look at who's endorsed my candidacy and you look at my career in the district attorney's office and with the experience I bring, I'm the best candidate in this race.
Thank you, Attorney Wiley. Attorney Price, bring us home.
So what you can expect from me is on my website and has been there. It's the 10-point platform. My views are found online. You don't need to take Mr. Wiley's word for what I've said. What I've said is in writing, and I've made commitments. I've completed questionnaires, whereas my opponent has not, to set forth what my position has been. As Secretary Weber says, this situation did not happen overnight. All of us were asleep at the wheel when looking at our criminal justice system. We've allowed the Republican-driven agenda from the 1930s and the 40s to be how we define criminal justice in Alameda County. I'm the first person to run for this seat since 1966. And it makes a difference when you don't have a contest, you don't have transparency, you don't have equity, and you don't have accountability. And finally, the question you have to ask yourself is, how can you expect someone who has participated, prospered, and profited in a broken system for 32 years to be able to fix it? If that makes sense to you, then you should vote for my opponent. But if you want real change and you want a system that works for us, that doesn't allow violence in our streets, that does focus on the gun violence, and in fact does live in Alameda County, then you should vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you both, Attorney Wiley and Attorney Price, for your comments today. I think we all on this call can say we feel a little bit closer to understanding a little bit more about your platform and your proposed agendas for the Office of District Attorney. I will now turn it back over to Reverend Jeremy.
Thanks for having us.
Perfect. Thank you, Attorney Gross and Attorney Wiley and Price for this much needed, healthy, and transparent dialogue around this race and what is needed for the continued safety of Black and Brown folks here in Alameda County. So as Sister Gross said, we are kind of tight on the agenda, so I am going to pass it over now to our very own Sister DJ Richardson, who is going to introduce Miss Bobby Hamlin. Let me just make sure I have that. Bonnie Hamlin, my apologies. Bonnie Hamlin with the League of Women Voters, who is going to briefly go over, not briefly, but go in depth around the California state propositions. So Sister DJ, it is on you, and I am going to work on the back end to make sure Ms. Hamlin can share her presentation.
Thank you. And if we could pin Ms. Bonnie, is she on the line?
Yeah, she's good. You can introduce.
Great.
Hello.
Hello. Bonnie Hamlin became active with the LWVO, the League of Women Voters, in the mid-1980s when she was the founding president of the Oakland Nakogna Sister City Association, which was an association founded to support Oakland's relationship to her Russian sister city. She has served in many different capacities as treasurer, newsletter editor, program vice president, nominating committee chair, president, and twice as administrative vice president, the position she most recently held. As president of LWVO, she was involved with the adoption of Oakland's Sunshine Ordinance, which promotes access to government documents and timely notice of public meetings. And as president, she also participated in the drafting of the Estuary Plan, which was a plan that is part of Oakland's general plan, which includes policies to enhance the Oakland waterfront as a resource for the city. But she didn't stop there. As president, she also ran the campaign to amend Oakland's city charter to allow for city council vacancies to be filled by special election. And she worked with Common Cause to support the introduction of partial public financing of elections. We all know that public financing of elections intends to increase voter choice and electoral competition, increase voter participation, while reducing the influence of special interest groups and the cost of campaigns. Bonnie Hamlin is an expert in all things having to do with the League. She is the Northern California liaison for Voters Edge, a project of the League of Women Voters of California, Education Fund, and MapLight. Voters Edge is a nonpartisan.
Yeah, I definitely did. I know it well.
Voters Edge is a nonpartisan voter information website. She is also the Northern California liaison for Smart Voter, another nonpartisan voter information website. Bonnie coordinates volunteers in the League's office, manages and tracks the membership, manages and tracks databases, collaborates with other advocacy organizations on issues like redistricting, campaign finance reform, and the effectiveness of oversight commissions such as the Alameda County Sheriff Oversight Commission. She advocates for educational equity. She coordinates training workshops and coaches local and Central Valley Leagues in membership and leadership development. I must confess that I was so impressed by Bonnie Hamlin's bio that I Googled to see if she has ever been nominated for the Jefferson Award. Welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you so much for that generous introduction. I'm a little bit overwhelmed. I didn't realize that I'd written so much. Thank you so much to Allen Temple Baptist Church Ministry for inviting the League to make a presentation today. You've got me because we're just starting our training for speakers, and I've been a speaker before, and so they thought that I could probably wing this without completing the training. But I want to say that this will be not in-depth discussion of the ballot measures, but rather a bit of an introduction to you. Think of it as the first coat of paint. We'll talk about the state ballot measures. There are 7 of them this year. And then I would encourage you to seek to, and excuse me, this is the first time that I'm sharing my screen and I'm not doing it right. So let me see if I can get this right again. Oh dear. You've got my full screen, which is certainly more than I had intended to share. Here are the ballot measures that I want to talk about today. So just a brief introduction for the League of Women Voters itself. There are hundreds of leagues in the United States, 6 in Alameda County. The League of Women Voters of Oakland is probably the oldest, about to celebrate our 100th anniversary in a couple of years. The League was formed by the people in the United States who had worked so hard to get the vote for women, the suffragists. And we anticipated the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920 and were founded in February with the 19th Amendment passed in August. We realized that there would be a huge number of people who had never voted before and who would probably benefit by the opportunity to understand the whole process of voting. From the very beginning, we have been nonpartisan. We chose not to associate ourselves with a political party or particular candidates, feeling that the League would be more respected if we did take the nonpartisan stance. So the League, from the very beginning, did voter education, telling people just, what the whole voting process was all about, and then how to assess the issues and the candidates who are on the ballot. That's the education hat that the League wears. But we also, from the very beginning, wore the hat of advocacy, advocating on child labor laws and rights of women, and the United Nations, for example. So we wear the 2 hats. We try to keep them separate. Today, I'm going to be speaking with my voter education hat on and trying to give you an evenly balanced presentation of the measures that are on the state ballot this year. So ballot measures are never simple. And so just briefly, how to evaluate a ballot measure. Which side do you agree with? Do you support or oppose? Sometimes it's very informative to follow the money. Who is spending the money to try to pass this measure or oppose the measure? Ballot measures are supposed to be fairly straightforward and are usually mandated to be about one issue, not multiple issues. And so you want to look at the ballot measure. Is it well written? Or are the things that are being proposed in this measure going to cause more problems than the measure would solve? It's important to remember, and I think you all are aware of this, that voting is not a test. You do not have to vote on every issue or every candidate that you will see on the ballot. You should choose to vote on the issues that you understand, vote for what is clear and important to you, and try to get to know a little bit about the candidates so that you can make an informed decision. At the end of my presentation, I'm going to give you information about sources of further information. As I say, this is not going to be an exhaustive presentation, though it may go on longer than you'd like it to. For the November election, there are 7 California propositions. How did these get on the ballot? A lot of them are put on the ballot by people who are gathering signatures in support of putting an initiative on the ballot. Other ballot measures are put on the ballot by the state lawmakers. And what do propositions do? They're usually suggesting a change of some sort. They may be a constitutional amendment, they may be a new law, or they may be both, a constitutional amendment and a new law. And the fourth type of ballot measure is a referendum. And actually one of the measures that's on the ballot this fall is a referendum. And I'll talk more about what a referendum is when we get to that. All of the measures require a simple majority of 50% plus 1 of the vote to pass. On the local measures, you have various numbers of voters that are required to pass the measure, but state ballot measures all require a simple majority. So I don't know whether I will have time to answer questions about specific measures, but if you have questions about a particular measure, put your question in the chat and we'll see whether we have time to talk about try to answer your questions. Proposition 1 is a measure for reproductive freedom, and it was put on by the legislature, and it will be a constitutional amendment. By way of background, all of us are aware of the fact that the Supreme Court decided that Roe versus Wade should not be the law anymore. And so there is no longer federal constitutional right to abortion. In California, abortion is legal under California state law, and this proposition doesn't change that law. What Proposition 1 will do is to put into the Constitution the right to choose an abortion or contraception. At the time that Roe versus Wade was overthrown, there's some suggestion that the Supreme Court may look at other reproductive issues that are not guaranteed by currently guaranteed by the national constitution, and suggest that there should be laws against the right to contraception, or perhaps even propose or encourage the Congress to put a law, an amendment to the Constitution that there would be no right to abortion in the Constitution. Currently, there's just no guarantee. The other reason for Proposition 1 is to make it hard for future state government or the court to limit reproductive rights. Once you have something in the Constitution, it's harder to change a Constitution than it is to change a law. So the money that's being spent for Proposition 1, at this point, as of September 20th, there's about $3 million that has been spent to support it. And there you can see the people who are putting up the money. The people whose names are bold are people who have signed the arguments for Measure 1. on the against side, so far, none of the contributions opposing Proposition 1 have risen to the level where they need to be reported. And so we show that that no money has been raised to oppose Proposition 1, but that's not completely clear. There probably is money that is opposing the measure, but it hasn't risen to the amount that has to be reported. In the right-hand column, you can see the names of the people who are opposing Proposition 1 and who have actually signed the ballot measure, if their names are in bold, and then others who are opposing Proposition 1 are listed there also. Reasons to support this measure. These reasons are not suggestions from the league. They're sometimes not the exact opposite arguments that are being presented in favor or in opposition to the measures, but they are a sample of the types of reasons to support the measure or a sample of the reasons to oppose the measure. So reasons to support. If you believe that reproductive freedom is a fundamental right, that would be a reason to support Proposition 1. If you believe that reproductive medical decisions belong with individuals and their healthcare providers, that would be another reason to support Proposition 1. If you feel that women already have the right to choose under current California law, we don't need further law or amendment to the Constitution about that issue, you might then oppose Proposition 1. And if you don't support reproductive freedoms as a right, you would oppose Proposition 1. So what your vote would mean, if you vote yes, the California Constitution will explicitly include rights to reproductive freedoms. If you vote against Proposition 1 and it fails, the Constitution will not be changed. The next measures that I'm going to talk about are Measure 26, which is one of two measures on the ballot, as those of you who watch television are aware. Proposition 26 and Proposition 27 both deal with gambling, but they are different laws, and both can pass. If both get 50% plus one, both can pass, and both would go into effect unless there are parts of each measure that conflict. And then in that case, the measure that got the highest number of votes, that measure would prevail if there's a conflict between the two measures and if both measures pass. So Proposition 26 allows in-person roulette, dice, and sports betting. It was an initiative was put on the ballot by gathering signatures. It will be an amendment to the Constitution and it will be a new law. By way of background, currently gambling in California is limited to the state lottery, card rooms, horse race betting, and tribal casinos. The effect of Proposition 26, if it would pass, is it would allow additional types of gambling, that is sports betting at racetracks and tribal casinos, and then roulette and dice at tribal casinos. The fiscal effect of Proposition 26, if it passes, would be increased state revenues, probably in the tens of millions of dollars annually. People who are working hard to pass Proposition 26 have spent $109 million as of September 20, and they include 5 California tribal groups, 54 more tribal groups, California tribal groups, which have not been contributing money. The 5 California tribal groups have contributed over $100,000 to pass this measure. And then in addition, showing up for racial justice, 5 branches of that organization, the Urban League, and 3 branches of the NAACP. People who are working to defeat Proposition 26 have spent $42 million, and the money has come primarily from 6 non-tribal card rooms and 3 California tribal groups and a group called California Animal Welfare. And you say, well, why would that group be against Proposition 26? And the feeling is that if Proposition 26 and sports betting is allowed at racetracks, that will support racetracks which abuse horses. So that's why that group is opposing Measure 26. Reasons to support Measure 26 would be if you believe that we should help Indian tribes to provide vital services to their members. Some of the income from the tribal casinos does go to support the tribes, providing services to their members and also providing jobs. And another reason that you might support Proposition 26 would that sports betting permitted by Proposition 26 will allow only in-person sports betting. And so it may be more easy to enforce the age limits that children would not be able to vote, do sports betting. Reason to oppose Measure 26, it expands the monopoly of the tribal casinos. And so the casinos of the tribes that do not have tribal casinos oppose this measure. And also the card rooms, because they feel that if sports betting can happen at the tribal casinos, that this is likely to take people away from the card rooms. Another reason to oppose this measure and Measure 27, gambling is addictive. So if you feel that we shouldn't encourage gambling, then you would want to oppose Proposition 26. What your vote means, a yes vote means that there will be more in-person gambling options, namely roulette, dice, and sports betting at tribal casinos. If the Proposition 26 is defeated, then gambling will be limited to the current options. Proposition 27, also one having to do with gambling, but this allows online sports betting. It does not change the rules for in-person what's offered in the tribal casinos. It allows, well, excuse me, it does not allow in-person sports betting. So as this says in the background, most sports betting is not allowed in California, but there have been recent changes in the law that do permit sports betting. And so California is wanting to get in on the game. The effect of Proposition 27 would be to legalize online betting on sports and some non-athletic events, like you would be able to do online betting for the outcome of the I'm blanking completely on this, the awards for movies and other types of competitive events. Another effect would be that large gambling companies could contract with the Indian tribes to offer sports betting, online sports betting at the casinos. And the effect would be that there would be no betting on youth sports or elections. Proposition 27's financial effects would increase state revenues by hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And then if there is money left over after the money is spent for regulating the online betting, and some loopholes that are in the actual measure that allow for some online sports betting to be free. If there is proceeds left after those effects, then 85% of the money that is profit would go towards programs for homeless and prevent homelessness, to treat mental health, and to treat gambling addiction. And also 15% of the profit would go to tribes that are not involved in online sports betting. So this explains a little bit of why some people are for it and why some people are against it. There's lots of money being spent on this particular measure. 169 million so far to support Proposition 27, with most of it coming from the 7 national online gaming corporations who are funneling their money through an organization called Californians for Solution to Homelessness and Mental Health. In addition, there are 3 California tribes that are supporting it, 5 mayors of California cities, including the mayor of Oakland, the mayor of Sacramento, and the mayor of Fresno. The people who are spending money to defeat Proposition 27 include the 5 California tribes that have the biggest casinos, I'm guessing, and then 59 additional California tribes, because they're planning their own proposition in 2024 that will be more of the money will be available to California and less will go to the national gaming organizations. The California Teachers Union, Democrats and Republicans, the LA Times and the Mercury News are not supporting Proposition 27. Reasons to support Proposition 27. The dollars that may be available for preventing homelessness, treating mental health, and treating addiction sooner than 2024. And it can bring some money to smaller Indian tribes. Reasons to oppose Proposition 27. The Proposition 27 benefits the large gaming companies and blocks smaller operations. The only companies that can negotiate with the tribes in California are the ones that are in 5 other states, I believe, or it may be 7, I'm not sure. And then it makes gambling more accessible. So what your vote means for, if you vote for 27, it will allow online sports betting. And if you vote against it, it will not allow online sports betting. The next measure is measure 28. And it provides more dollars for arts and music in the schools. It is an initiative. It was put on the ballot by gathering signatures, and it will put it on a new law on the books. So just by way of some background, the state is required to spend about 40% of the general fund on K through 14 education every year. However, in that spending, or in that a mandate to spend that money on education, there's no guaranteed funding for the arts and music education in K through 12 public schools. The money that comes from the state to the school districts can be spent as the school districts choose to spend it. But it's interesting to know that though there's currently no guaranteed source of funding for arts and music education in K-12 public schools, state law does require schools to provide arts and music instruction to all students in grades 1 through 6. And also, in order to graduate from high school students must complete a year in one of 3 courses of study, one of which is being arts and music education. So there is already some arts and music education in both elementary and high schools. It's just not mandated in the amount that this measure would mandate. So this funding would be in addition to the funding that's already guaranteed by Proposition 48, which is 98, which is the measure that was passed in 1988 that mandates a minimum of amount must be spent on K through 14 education, kindergarten through 2-year community colleges every year. And the minimum guaranteed by Prop 98 is about 40% calculated annually. So Prop 28 would require that the funding for arts and music education be at least 1% of the funding that will be received by schools in the prior year under Prop 98. And this funding would be in addition to the funding already guaranteed by Prop 98. Prop 98 would allocate more funding to schools serving many low-income students. So that is, that's the addition that's listed under in the right-hand column, one of the effects is additional funding for arts and music education, 1% of the about 40% of the general fund that goes to K through 14 education, and more help for schools with low-income students. The fiscal effect increased state expenses by about $1 billion per year. Who is supporting Prop 28? A group of people who have contributed quite a bit of money, up to about 9 million as of September 20th, in support of Prop 28, and then additional people who support Proposition 28, but have not contributed any money in support. So far, as of September 11th, again, there is not reportable contributions against Proposition 28. Reasons to support Proposition 28: improve students' personal and academic life. Studies have shown that students who have the opportunity for art and music, to study art and music in school, enjoy school more, are more likely to stay in school and graduate. And right now, only 1 in 5 schools has a dedicated teacher for the arts program. The money that would come from Proposition 28 for more arts and music in the school would be primarily for staff, but also some for supplies and training. Reasons to oppose Measure 28: the money that would be raised by Proposition 28 would not be available for other types of spending. It would be dedicated, it would be earmarked for arts and music in the school. And so this limits the flexibility to spend on the areas of highest need. It might be that school districts feel that they need to spend all of that 40% of the general fund money on other things in a particular year. But Proposition 28, if it passed, would limit their flexibility to portion out the money that's raised, that is given to them for education. So what your yes vote means, it's guaranteeing funds for arts and music education in K through 12 public schools. If you vote against it, or if Proposition 28 does not pass, there will be no change to the current funding. 2 more measures. Proposition 29. Oh no, not again, you're saying, not another measure on kidney dialysis units. Well, yes. It's another initiative that got enough signatures so that it's on the ballot again. It would change the law affecting kidney dialysis units. Background, there were similar propositions that have been on the ballot: Proposition 8 in 2018 and Proposition 23 in 2020, and neither of those passed. This measure is slightly different than the measures that have been on the ballot before. The changes are that instead of requiring just a medical person to be on call during dialysis, it would specify that it needed to be a doctor, a nurse practitioner, or a physician assistant. And another change from the previous measures were that it would require disclosure of who owns the clinics. So what would be the effect of Proposition 29 if it passed? A healthcare provider must be present, or telehealth during treatment hours. You're required to report dialysis-related infections. I think federal legislation already requires that. You'd be required to disclose who owns the clinic, anybody who owns 5% or more. It would give permission to, it would allow to close or reduce services if the cost of providing meeting the provisions of Proposition 29 would put the clinic into a position where it wasn't able to make any money or pay for the services that are already required. It would allow for permission to close or reduce their services, and it would call for treatment regardless of payment type. So what are the fiscal effects of Proposition 29? The cost to clinics are likely to be hundreds of thousands of dollars more for staff salaries. State and local governments may lose tens of millions of dollars if clinics close and patients end up going to emergency rooms. And then if clinics are allowed to negotiate higher reimbursement rates. So some of the money that reimburses the dialysis clinics comes from the state, comes from Medi-Cal. So the state could lose tens of millions of dollars more if Proposition 29 it passes. And this sums up what the propositions about the dialysis clinics are all about. It's a fight between the union, who feels that the workers in the clinics should be able to be unionized, and the dialysis clinic owners, DeVita and Fresenius, who would prefer not to have the people who work in the clinics unionized. So as you can see, lots of money is being spent, well, relatively a lot for the measure, and against the measure a lot more is being spent. As of the 23rd, it was 86 million. So reasons to support Proposition 29. A healthcare provider will be available for procedures, and it will help prevent financial discrimination. Reasons why you might vote against 29. The additional requirements could deplete hospitals and emergency rooms of staff that are being required now for the dialysis clinics. And then the increased client costs, which may result in clinics closing, dialysis clinics closing. So what does your vote mean? Yes, more regulation on kidney dialysis clinics. No, keep the current regulations. And there are regulations that guide the work of the clinics. And I misspoke when I started speaking about 29. Now there are two more measures. Proposition 30, a tax on millionaires for more electric cars. Background. California is working hard to increase the number of zero-emission vehicles, electric and other zero-emission vehicles on the roads in California. It's required that by 2026, 35% of the new cars sold will need to be zero-emission vehicles. And by 2030, 100% of the cars that will be sold in California will zero-emission vehicles. So California realizes that there is a problem with emissions from vehicles, that's one of the highest things contributing to the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And so California is working hard already to increase the number of zero-emission vehicles on the road. By law, as of 2030, 90% of the cars driven by drivers for Uber and Lyft and any other ride-sharing companies must be zero-emission vehicles. And then the federal and state governments are both putting money into states and states to increase, to speed up zero-emission vehicle adoption. The effect of Proposition 30 would be an increase income tax rate on high incomes. So people earning or with more than $2 million in earned income would have their tax rate on that money above $2 million and above, the tax rate would be increased. As you can see, 1.75%. And that increased income tax rate on those high incomes, 45% of the proceeds from the income increase on the income tax would be to promote the purchase of zero-emission vehicles. 35% would increase the availability of charging stations, and 25% would use to fund wildfire suppression and prevention. The fiscal effects in California would be to increase the income tax rate by 1.75% on individual incomes above 2%, above 2 million. So it would be an effective rate of 15.5%, which would be the highest in the country. It would generate $3.5 billion in revenue, 2.8% to 2.8 million to 4 billion annually to zero emission vehicle funding, and 700 million to 1 billion for wildfire response. Who is spending money to pass this measure? 26 million has been raised so far, and Lyft, interestingly enough, is spending the most. Then you can see the others who are also spending to pass this measure, and people who support the measure who are not making major contributions. People who want to defeat this measure include those that are listed at the top, and then the four groups at the bottom: Governor Newsom, the Republican Party, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association are opposing this measure. What are reasons to support Proposition 30? Greenhouse gas emissions from transportation are the largest contributors to climate change, and it would make zero emission vehicles more affordable. Right now, they tend to be very expensive, and that your average person cannot afford a zero emission vehicle, though that's changing. Reasons to oppose Proposition 30. State and federal governments are already making money available to promote a zero emission vehicle adoption. If you tax your high earners, they may leave the state or not come in the first place. If you put this tax on the millionaires for more electric cars, the money that's raised by the tax is earmarked for that. It can't be used for anything else, which may decrease the amount of money that can be spent on other issues that require money support of the state. So what does your vote mean? A yes vote: new tax on incomes over 2 million to increase electric vehicle adoption and fight wildfires. A vote no means no change to the current tax rate. And the last measure, Proposition 31. This is a referendum. I mentioned that the other measures are all measures that have either been put on the ballot by the state legislature or by gathering signatures, but this one is an unusual thing called a referendum. So right after this 2020 law was passed banning stores and vending machines for selling flavored tobacco products, a group of people gathered enough signatures to put this referendum on the ballot, which meant the law didn't go into effect and will only go into effect if voters approve this referendum. The fiscal effect is that if this ban passes, it's likely to result in reduced revenues, that tens of millions of dollars to $100 million, because it will ban the sale of flavored tobacco products. The people who are paying to support this measure or this referendum are listed on the left there. And the people who are voting are hoping that you will vote against this measure are the tobacco companies, not surprisingly. And then they're spending the money, and the California Republican Party also hopes that you will vote against this referendum, which, if it passes, will mean that sale of flavored tobaccos will be banned. If it fails, that ban will not go into effect. So reasons to support this measure: flavored tobacco products tend to lure children into a lifelong addiction and make it harder to quit smoking. Reasons to oppose this measure: it's already illegal to sell to children, so why do we need to ban flavored tobacco products? If we ban selling of flavored tobacco products, which include menthol flavored cigarettes, it may lead to more smuggling and crime, because there are a lot of people who like flavored tobacco. So what your vote means: if you vote yes, It will allow the law to take effect to ban the sale of flavored tobacco products. If Proposition 31 is defeated, then the law still will not be able to take effect. It's on hold because of the referendum. Okay, so I have finished my presentation. I think I've gone off the time that was allowed me, and I apologize. I just want to say thank you to all of you for being a voter. That if you want additional information about these measures, and obviously it was a hasty presentation, sort of as I said at the beginning, the first coat of paint. If you want more information to more fully understand these measures, the League of Women Voters website, lwvoakland.org, has links to a lot of other sources of information. And if you want information about everything on your ballot, the candidates, the measures, and where your polling places are, votersedge.org is a website that has lots of good information. And those of you who would like to join the League, go to our website, lwvoakland.org, and click on Join the League. We'd love to have your membership. Everybody can be a member of the League. You just have to be 16 years old or older in order to vote on League decisions that are made. And then at the last slide gives you sources of additional information. We all just got our big voters guide from the Secretary of State, came in the mail yesterday, I think, or the day before. And it has the full text of all the measures and all the arguments for and against, and all the people who are for and against. There are written pros and cons where you get one page of pros and cons for each of the measures, and you can get that at calvotes.org, cavotes.org. And then the Easy Voter Guide will give you little blurbs about all of the candidates for the state offices. And that's at www.easyvoterguide.org. And the League of Women Voters of Oakland also does an Easy Voter Guide that will give you little blurbs about all of the Oakland candidates for school board, for council, for mayor, and for city auditor. So thank you for having me today. Sorry for the hasty and shallow presentation, but hopefully it's an introduction and will leave you wanting more information before you vote.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Ms. Hamlin, and to the League of Women Voters for providing this timely and helpful information. Ms. Hamlin, you can stop sharing screen if you can.
Mm-hmm. If I can find that button. Oh, I'm not sure I can. I may have to go away, or other questions.
Well, we're at time, so
maybe I can just close. This is a document. I'll just close the document. There you go.
Let me see if I can. Okay, I think I got it. Okay, perfect.
Good.
So thank you again for this helpful information. We know that we are 11 minutes over now, but we hope that this can help better govern you all as you continue to get your ballots and continue to get ready to vote. Be on the lookout for more information from the Allen Temple Public Ministry, as we will be recommending some things. Of course, we do not endorse, but we will offer recommendations of which propositions we are in favor of. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for your continued support. We hope that this was a meaningful and helpful town hall. And by all means, you can flood us with your questions, concerns, comments, and we will be rolling out some more stuff in the coming weeks. So definitely be on the lookout. And so on behalf of Dr. Whitehurst and I and the public ministry team, we thank you all for your support. And I will turn it over to our very own Deacon Michael Johnson, who is our cluster leader and who will close us out in prayer. Again, thank you all.
Reverend Jeremy, is there a survey at the end of this particular town hall, or will it come later?
No, if there is a survey after this town hall, it will pop up as soon as you log off. So please complete that for us so that we can continue to be better and continue to know what the voice of the people need to hear from us. So yeah, so once you log off, there will be a survey that will generate, and we ask that you please complete that. Thank you, Sister DJ.
Let us pray.
You're awesome.
This is very powerful, very informative. Let us pray. Thank you for your leadership, Reverend Jeremy and Dr. Alley. God, our parent, we thank you for this wonderful afternoon where we've been informed, enlightened, and empowered to make a difference and know what that difference is. We thank you for the information that was shared from us from Dr. Weber, such powerful, pertinent information, and actually a call for us to do our part to strongly encourage our young people to get engaged in this movement of voting and using the power that has been given to us. We thank you for Brother Holland, who continues to be a part of that NAACP. We thank you for Attorney Gross. We thank you for Attorney Wiley and Attorney Price. May the Lord bless the two of you and whoever comes out after the people have voiced their vote, that one of you will do your due diligence in ensuring that our communities are safe and that the public servants are doing what they have been taken an oath to do, and that we can bring peace to our communities and to our families, to the state, to the feds, all the way up the board. So we thank you again as we go our separate ways, certainly not from God's presence. And may we continue to be an advocate for change, an advocate for peace, an advocate for social justice. What does it require the man that we do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God? We ask it all in the name of Jesus the Christ, our emancipator. In his holy name we pray. Amen. And thank God.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Deacon Johnson. And for sure, share this with your networks. We are definitely being intentional about getting young folks and youth into this space as well. So please share and disseminate to your networks. Thank you all again. Have a beautiful Saturday afternoon.